But I think we've got the majority of people in. We may have a few in a bit later, but welcome everybody to the early years safeguarding cluster, targeted at our designated safeguarding leads. We say May 2026 there, but on iLearn it was billed as the summer designated safeguarding lead, and at least the weather is now living up to that, so that feels a bit better than it did when we delivered this yesterday morning, when it wasn't quite so glorious. This one comes quite close to the other DSL. We had one in March. It's just the way the dates have fallen this year. But there are always updates that we can share to support you in this important safeguarding role. But there will also be what we've choosing to term spiral learning rather than repetition. We have purposefully put some things back in, perhaps that came up in the provider briefings, if we think it's specifically relevant to your safeguarding role. Then we've popped it back in, because sometimes it's different people that come to the provider briefings and the DSL, and just occasionally the information isn't disseminated or may not have been yet. So if you do see those slides again, it's on purpose. We're not just repeating for the sake of it, I promise you. This is the third session we're running of this briefing, and the first one came in at exactly an hour, the second one today slightly under, but we'll try and make sure we're all finished by 8 o'clock, so you have at least some of your evening. It looks like quite a full agenda, but as we know, these sessions are briefing sessions for a reason. They do contain quite a lot of information. I will try not to seem to rush it, because we've had some feedback that some of them are so packed it seems a little rushed. So hopefully we can go through it nice and steady and give you opportunities to feedback through the chat or unmuting yourselves. I won't read through all of that, but you can just see a flavour of what we have coming up this evening. And I will just point out that it's the safer sleep element that we would particularly like feedback from you, particularly as we have a number of our childminding colleagues with us this evening, who may be finding elements of that new guidance, statutory guidance, challenging, and we'd love to hear from you. We will just say, as a little bit of a caveat, obviously we have just access to the same guidance that you do. And if there are challenges, we will do our very best to answer them this evening. But we want to give you the best support, advice, and guidance possible. So if there's anything we're not sure about, we do have a meeting coming up with our Ofsted colleagues on the 2nd of June, and we will be taking any questions or queries to them, and then we'll be doing an email out to the sector to try and answer as many questions as possible. But really, it's your feedback and how you're feeling in practice about that guidance that we want to gather, so that when we have our conversations with Ofsted or with DfE, we can flag that. It's not to say it's going to change necessarily, but if there are real sticking points for you, then it's likely, of course, that your colleagues across the country are going to be feeling the same thing. So, if they need additional guidance, then that's how they'll know to put that out. We always start these sessions with what we hope is a sort of golden thread that runs through these safeguarding clusters, which is trying to assure you that you're never alone through safeguarding. Particularly, again, we have a number of childminders who, although you may have assistance, a number of you still are lone workers, and of course you're the named DSL for your setting. There are other people out there that can support, the contacts in our team, and we are continuously trying to improve the local processes so that these numbers work, that there are people, as we are, assuring you, on the other end of the line, and that your concerns, your anxieties, your information is taken seriously, and that you are responded to in an appropriate way. So we are going to be talking a little bit later on about how we're trying to strengthen that further if you do have an experience that is less than excellent, because as part of strengthening this safeguarding net across our children in North Somerset, we have to work in a multi-agency way. And so we need to hear feedback, both when it's gone well. And we had a lovely email following the first one of these sessions saying, we know we often complain about some of the front door calls and perhaps some of the responses we've had from duty and from social workers, but I want to feedback something wonderful that happened. So, both sets are really important, but perhaps most importantly at the moment is if there's something you feel we need to change or that hasn't gone smoothly. So we'll be sharing a little later on how we can formalise that process a little more in order to improve. The other thing I just want to remind you about is that Lado contact address. That's no longer a phone number. That is now operated on a triage system. So the idea is that you email the Lado. If it is urgent, you put that in the subject bar, and that either the Lado or the independent support reviewing officers who are manning that email address will get back to you. And then they can support you to complete a referral form, etc. We will be sharing later on that there is a session in June, or 3 sessions in June, 3 of the same repeated sessions to enable you to attend on managing allegations, which is being run by Alison Donovan, our current Lado. So if that's something that you want to strengthen your practice with, then please do attend that session so that you can ask questions directly of Ali. It could be a really useful one to put on your DSL calendar. We also wanted to reshare this slide again. It's about those support networks that are out there, about our children's centres and family hubs. Just a reminder that we're developing 3 of the children's centres to become Best Start family hubs, but within there, they've also got safeguarding at the heart of their practice, and of course, work in very much a family-centred way. So often through your parental partnerships and the great relationships you develop, and being the eyes and ears often with families or seeing children 15, 30 plus hours a week, you are so well placed to be noticing if there are issues within the family, issues around parenting, or families struggling that could then have an impact on safeguarding of the children that you are working with. So this is the 0 to 19 that you can be referring to or phoning up for no names, and being able to signpost to some of the services, or your families to some of the services that they offer. So these are some additional contact details for those team leaders across your area in the family hubs and children's centres. I should have said earlier on, and I usually do with these contact numbers. Again, I'm not after teaching you to suck eggs. I know a number of you have been DSLs for a long time, but really useful getting those printed out. And a number of people now have them put on belt loops for each individual practitioner, because of course one of the DSL roles is making sure that safeguarding information is both disseminated across staff teams, but also embedded to ensure that your staff teams continue to grow that depth and breadth of knowledge around safeguarding process and practice, as well as you. So if you haven't done that yet, then that sort of laminated belt loop option with these contact details on can be really useful, particularly, of course, around that strengthening whistleblowing. It can be really difficult if you've got an assistant or a team member who feels they are concerned about your practice or the practice of a colleague, particularly a senior colleague that they're concerned about, and they find it difficult to be writing down the number or taking the number out of the setting. So it really strengthens that practice if they've got those that they can take out of the setting with them. These are just a reminder of some of those parenting groups, as I've just mentioned, with that safeguarding hat on, noticing where there are challenges and noticing where parents may need some additional support. There are a number there. We've just highlighted over the ones that are specifically around parenting children within our age bracket. But as I've already mentioned, knowing that whole family picture can be really useful, and knowing what else is out there for those older children, if it's actually the parenting of the older children that you feel is having an impact on family and perhaps on the safeguarding of the children you're working with. Just a heads up that our annual safeguarding questionnaire is going to be coming out and sent out to you on the 5th of June. We want to stress that there is an expectation from the Safeguarding Board and from our team that all providers complete the questionnaire. However, this is not statutory. So we're relying on your goodwill, as we often do, to realise the significance of this. This is how we can gauge from your own evaluation of your skills and knowledge in this area where the gaps in confidence or competence are across the sector. That means we can then target our safeguarding workshops, our designated safeguarding lead clusters, and any other additional CPD. We can target it effectively to meet that need. And like with the annual provision audit, the more returns we get, the more targeted our response can be and the more effective it can be across the piece. I will be preaching to the converted today, I'm sure, but please, through any of the groups that you've got, through any of your networks and your links with other colleagues, please do urge them to complete this when it arrives in their inbox. It's very similar to last year. It's a very short online form. We only ever ask the questions now that we don't get in another form, don't get the answers to in another form. And we've made it, or certainly Liz and Ria have worked really hard at getting it really succinct, really short, and it should only take a few minutes to complete. Just a reminder that if you have more than one setting, please can you complete a separate questionnaire for each, as the answers may not be the same, especially around staff confidence. Just to reiterate, they're highly valuable to us. As part of that email, an optional safeguarding audit will also be sent. This doesn't need to be returned to us, but you may find it useful for self-evaluation. And that's something you can work through at your, I laughingly say leisure, but it's something that is, can be really effective at just looking at what's already in place. So it can be a really uplifting exercise by thinking, actually, there's no way we're starting from scratch. We haven't had any Ofsteds for quite some time now where we did not pass the settings did not pass the safeguarding element. So really proud of that record and wanting it to continue. This is something that could really support your role as DSL to complete, but not statutory, just good practice. And I will be sharing what that looks like and a little bit more information about that later on in the presentation. Oh, double whammy there. This next part is just a bit of that spiral learning I was talking about earlier with your DSL heads on. The early years foundation stage statutory framework for England, as we know, underwent significant safeguarding updates, which were effective from the 1st of September last year, which impacts your role. The 2025 edition replaces the 2024 version. So if any of those are lurking, please get rid of them. And the new version focuses on heightened accountability, mandatory training renewals, and enhanced child protection measures. So the next few slides are just a reminder of that. And hopefully it will just be things that you're mentally ticking off in your head, but there may be some things that just make you think, oh, that's something we haven't quite done yet, because we do know in the very busy lives you have under your EYFS statutory guidance across the board, things can drop off with best intentions. So here's a reminder about those key updates and actions required for DSLs. So that mandatory training and qualifications, there are now 2-year refreshers. So DSLs and all early years practitioners must now renew their safeguarding training at least every 2 years, rather than the previous 3 years that were recommended. That paediatric first aid, all staff, including students, trainees and volunteers, must hold valid paediatric first aid certificates before being counted in those important staff ratios. And just that role focus. So we've called you DSLs for some time now, but we've now been told they've formally replaced the lead practitioner by the title designated safeguarding lead in group-based settings to align with schools. And of course, childminders must take the lead responsibility for safeguarding children in their setting. We are noticing an upward trend, particularly in bigger group settings, of the designated safeguarding lead having at least one, if not in some cases, 2 deputies, just to spread that responsibility a little bit. So it's something, if you are in one of those larger settings and have the ability to do that, that's something you consider. The policy and procedure updates, the whistleblowing policy. So that formal written whistleblowing policy is now a statutory requirement. Safe eating, there are those new specific requirements for safe eating, addressing choking risks, which must be included in policies. Attendance tracking, settings must have a clear proactive procedure to follow up on prolonged or unexplained child absences, even for children under compulsory school age. And just a little bit of an additional plea from us there. We've had a few incidents recently where children who are known to be already at risk perhaps of harm, or perhaps just on your radar around safeguarding, or perhaps from one of our vulnerable groups like children in care, child in need, etc., heightening your awareness under your absence policy if those children are absent, and following those up really thoroughly. So making sure that you know that, and in your absence, making sure again that's one of the things that is really shared and embedded across your staff team procedures to make sure that we are noticing, even as we say, it's not compulsory school age, but still we have that safeguarding responsibility. Intimate care, so policies must reflect updated guidance on balancing dignity with safety during nappy changing and toileting. And of course, the new safer sleep guidance that came in after this will become part of the EYFS from September 26, but needs to be followed now. So you need to be demonstrating that you're compliant now. And that's why we'll be asking for feedback from you about how that is going. So suggested key actions for DSLs in light of the two previous slides. One is to conduct a safeguarding audit, and the one that we provide would be a good example of that, but you can of course do your own if you've got one up and running. To review those current policies, training logs, and safer recruitment processes. Again, Liz is going to just share a couple of slides that we did share at the provider briefings around safer recruitment, where you could perhaps access that training, and around references. Establishing a training tracker, create a robust system to track the new 2-year training cycle. Again, particularly in those larger group settings, 2 years can come around so quickly. And when you're trying to make sure that all of your staff team are trained every 2 years, you're having some kind of a system in place now will take away a lot of anxiety later on in trying to chase that up. And demonstrate embedding. DSLs mustn't just log training, but demonstrate how they are supporting staff to put safeguarding knowledge into everyday practice. So there's all important scenarios at staff meetings, or questioning your staff, I say on a sort of daily, weekly basis, just as part of your DSL role, to not try and catch them out in any way, shape, or form, but to strengthen their confidence and competence. Of course, to keep children safe, but also if they are inspected, then if they're used to people asking them safeguarding questions regularly, people tend not to be quite such a rabbit in headlights if they're asked a question or put on the spot when we're going through an inspection. So a real sort of a win-win if you're doing that kind of practice as part of your role. And that connecting with local services, ensuring your records include tracking children in care, including kinship care, and those arrangements for potential early help. So it's again, we know through the new Ofsted toolkit, it's that equity model. It's making sure you know from the beginning that you have identified your vulnerable groups, those children most at risk of harm or at risk of poor outcomes, making sure that you're doing everything you can, again, reaching out to those other professionals that may be involved, and making sure that you are keeping up to date and keeping good records about where that child is and where they are, working with other professionals and showing your knowledge of that. Next, we just wanted to share this message from Shelley Caldwell. Shelley, a number of you may know her name. She has been working in North Somerset for 12 years in various roles, but she wanted to introduce herself as the new service lead for the integrated front door, leading us through quite a lot of change, navigating the children's social care reforms and the ongoing SEND reforms. And she's really keen to ensure that the integrated front door remains focused on supporting families, strong multi-agency collaboration, clear decision making, and timely and proportionate support for children and families. Shelley specifically noted that schools and early years settings play a crucial role in this system, both in the early identification of need, risk, and harm, and that your contribution is central to achieving our shared ambition of the right support at the right time for children and families. So she really is reaching out, looking forward to working closely with you. She's saying that they value open communication and are always happy to hear from you, and asking you not to hesitate to reach out to her directly. So there is her email there and her telephone number. So particularly if we're talking about some of the, we were talking earlier on about if there are issues with any of the processes through front door, one of the things you could do is to contact Shelley directly. And I'll be sharing some other slides in a moment about other ways that you could challenge decisions or feedback if the processes you've encountered you don't think are reaching the expectations that they should. So staying on the subject of the front door, Paul Cox, who I know you're all familiar with, who is our safeguarding and education lead and sits within the front door, he meets with the police regularly as part of the multi-agency safeguarding hub, so the MASH. And one of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of years is trying to embed something in other counties. It's called the Encompass system, which is ensuring that if police involvement goes to a family home, that the children within that home have their schools and now their early years settings contacted, so that they have that additional information to keep children safe. There's a slight flaw in that, and that we think it will always be there, in that we can only track those children who are funded in settings, because what Paul does is if he has a call that there's perhaps a domestic violence incident that's happened in a home, and there's an early years child there, he can contact Vicky Burt, who holds the funding records. Then she can check and see which setting that child attends, and then Paul can contact that setting. But of course, if there are privately funded children involved, we can't do it. But at least it's better than it was. And Paul just shared that from September 25 to March 26, 24 early years settings, including childminders and nurseries, were contacted, which is 5% of all requests. The no names consultation line, however, which is that highlighted number at the bottom, which is on the initial contact slide, that 01275 888 690, is one of the, what could be a real hotline for you for your safeguarding concerns. There's always our team available as well, but going to this no names consultation means you get directly to social work support, who of course are working in this realm all of the time, and will be able to give you really timely professional advice if you are grappling with what to do next with some safeguarding issues that may be arising in your setting. So please do use that support. At the moment, we're not saying this is too little, because it may be we're using it to the right amount, but we just want to keep promoting that this is one of those other ways that we're hoping you don't feel alone in this role. And Paul shared that from September to March, again, at 27 calls came in for no names consultation from across the sector. In comparison with the total number across education was 217 calls. So as a percentage, that's 12.5% of those calls. And like I say, we're not saying that's good or bad. We're just wanting to ensure that people aren't missing that, and that and that they know that support is there. So now just wanting to introduce this issue resolution policy. It has previously been called the escalation policy, but there's something about issue resolution that seems to imply this is around seeking solutions to challenges rather than just challenging and butting heads with colleagues. It's about working together, because ultimately our aims are the same: to keep children safe. But we all have a responsibility around safeguarding, and if we feel with our through our professional lens that something has not been dealt with effectively, or a case has been closed and we don't feel it should have been, or you've been dealt with in a way that you don't feel was professional or kind or effective through any of your dealings, through front door perhaps, then we need to be pulling people together to have those professional conversations and to close those gaps. So this it comes from the Children's Partnership Board. It provides a pathway for these views to be expressed and taken seriously, whilst respecting each other in a healthy interagency working culture. We know that respectful challenge is a key feature and is welcomed. So this policy is for all agencies across the partnership, both statutory and third sector, so that volunteer sector, to facilitate agency to agency resolution. And we're committed to being transparent and to undertake issue resolution respectfully, recognising that having differing views is not about proving who is right or wrong, but seeking to resolve issues in the best interest of the child or young person. So this PowerPoint will be up to share on the iLearn platform. I do urge you to click on any of these blue links, of course, take you directly to the documentation to read through that, because it's something we are really trying to embed more in our practice. I've recently undertaken 3 of these conversations, which have all actually, I've got into it with a little bit of trepidation, I will be honest, because when you're offering a level of challenge, sometimes that can be they can be difficult conversations. But everybody around the table, it was an online meeting, was very respectful and listened to each other's feedback. And actually, there have been actions at the end of each of those meetings, which were really positive, and will work towards tightening some of those gaps. So the purpose of the procedure is to provide that clear pathway for the resolution of differences, facilitating a timely resolution, ensuring the needs of the child or young person being discussed are met. I will just say, of course, if there is ever a child at risk of harm, we wouldn't do this. This is more a reflective process. You follow all your usual safeguarding processes, but this is on reflection, just thinking, actually, no, that could have been better, or it's been closed, and I don't think it should have been closed. So, this just doesn't replace that. And I will just say that the timely resolution, when you read through the policy, there is an ambition that if there is a complaint or a challenge that needs to be made, is trying to make it within 24 hours and trying to pull that meeting together as soon as possible. We haven't managed that yet, but again, the more skilled we get at running these, and the more people know that if they get a call around this, they have to try and prioritise it, the better that will be. But don't let that stop you if you've kind of mulled on something that's been a week or two and you think, oh, I can't go through that now because it should have been within a day. Don't let that stop you. Please do still let us know. So the aims of the procedure is to support development of a shared understanding, promote best multi-agency practices, provide practitioners with the means to raise questions by resolving issues and professional differences, overcoming problematic areas, and promoting effective resolutions. So, of course, you can contact Front Door directly, or any of the people that you've been working with that you want to meet. But if you would like our team to facilitate that, then please do contact me, either email me or phone me, and I can facilitate that meeting for you and pull people together. I'm whistling on. I'm assuming there's nothing in chat yet, Liz or Karen. No.
No, nothing in chat now.
No. Okay. Thanks, Liz. Okay, so the safer sleep requirements, again, this is a bit of that spiral learning. This is still relatively new. And we did share at the provider briefings, and I'm sure all of you will have read this cover to cover. Just a reminder, this came out because of the awful death of Gigi, a baby in a setting, and her parents, Katie and John, have been campaigning hard for this. And the safer sleep that's going to be part of the EYFS from September is a result of that. So the DFA is updating the wording of the early years foundation stage to make it clear that all early years settings are required to meet the safer sleep requirements in accordance with NHS guidance. We know it's coming in September, but the Early Years Education Minister, Olivia Bailey, has said that providers must already be compliant with them now. So that's why we'd really love to hear if you'd, either like to unmute yourself or be thinking of these next couple of slides as things come up. If you would like to unmute or write anything in chat about anything that you're finding particularly challenging this, anything that you don't feel is particularly clear, or any questions you would like us to try and clarify either now or to take to Ofsted when we meet them. So I will go on, and then Karen and Liz can let me know if I need to stop to respond to anything in chat, or if you can use your hand up if you want to say something, that would be really useful as well. So the updated wording developed for children under 2 with input from the Lullaby Trust. And just while we're saying that, for children under 2, we had some people saying, this is not, anything to do with those older children. All we would say is that, of course, with new guidance, Ofsted have a particularly sharp focus on this. So I would just recommend that you look at your sleep practices across the board and just make sure you can articulate any safety measures that you're putting in place. But this is going to be that statutory guidance. So these comments that on the next 2 slides are what you have to be working towards, what you have to have in place. Nothing to respond to yet? No. I'll go on to the next one. Like I said, I'm not going to read it through a bit at a time because it's, you can read it yourselves. It's just really um, wanting to know if there's things that have already come up that you've already been grappling with. So some of the things that we absolutely must do straight away is ensure that all staff read that NHS advice on sudden infant death syndrome. And again, that's that DSL role of making sure that it's not just you that's knowledgeable, but that you share this information and you ensure that it's embedded. So you ask your staff questions, you put up information around the setting while this information is getting inside people's brain and getting inside their knowledge and practice. And so, making sure you're keeping records if we must ensure, are you getting your staff to read it? Are they signing that they've read it? And then are you having ongoing discussions about that? More information on the Safer Sleep guidance is also available from the Lullaby Trust. There is that Lullaby Trust poster. And again, just a reminder that all of these hyperlinks will take you straight to these bits of guidance when you access the PowerPoint. And it's also worth reading the DfE Safer Sleep Guidance. That does sort of unpick some of the guidance in more detail. So please do look at that as an additional piece of support. So suggested action for providers are to review and update setting policies to align with the NHS Safer Sleep Guidance, to ensure all staff understand the new strict guidelines and the rationale behind them. And I think childminders locally have shared with us that they've attended the safer sleep training by the Lullaby Trust, which is about a £30 cost. But again, that may be something that you think is worth an investment. So just to alert you to that. And parental engagement. One of the things, the feedback we've had from other sessions that we've run is particularly around transitions. One of the things we want is to make those transitions as smooth as possible for children, not add any extra layers of trauma by them being separated from their main carer. And if one of the things we're no longer allowed to do is have a child with a comforter, then we need to make sure we're clear about why that is and be working with parents to listen to their concerns, but also to ensure your setting policy adheres to the Safer Sleep guidance, even if it differs from a parent's request. So something we need to be perhaps talking about definitely talking about right from that induction and sharing with parents the guidance that we have to stick with and working out ways of being as creative as possible while sticking within those statutory guidelines.
Gail, Heidi's just made a comment. She's saying that she attended the Safer Sleep training last week and it came up that the guidance from the DfE differs from the Lullaby Trust. It's making a bit unclear what to follow. So maybe that's something you can highlight to Ofsted when you meet with them.
That's really useful, Heidi. Thank you so much. I will definitely take that up. So it was the Lullaby Trust that told you that, and presumably they must be working very hard with DfE to get that adapted, I would imagine. Did they say that they were doing that? Did they say they were taking action or?
Sorry, it was the childminding agency that I'm registered with. So they provided some training last week, and I attended that last Thursday evening, I think. And they said then that the DfE and the Lullaby Trust is slightly different in what it's saying.
They didn't say in which specific areas, did they? Have they done a sort of cross-reference?
Not massively, no, but just that
Okay.
things are slightly different.
That's really useful to know because that doesn't help anybody at all, does it? They're working together because the DfE has been advised by the Lullaby Trust, so they ought to. So thank you, Heidi. That's really useful. We can definitely feed that back. Just can I just say, if they do send out anything from the childminding agency, pinpointing exactly where those differences are, that would be really useful rather than us kind of trawling through. If that work's already been done, that might be really helpful. But only if they do. I don't want to give you extra work. Just thanks for highlighting it.
And then Laura's just commented that with comforter items, would it be acceptable for the child to have this initially to fall asleep if we are present, then remove from the cot once we're asleep? And that's that's common questions that have been asked in the previous sessions, hasn't it, Gail?
Absolutely. And as far as we're aware for now, you can draw up a risk assessment that if it states quite clearly that that's what you'll do, we believe that will be enough. But that's one of the questions we are taking to Ofsted to just verify because the actual guidance at the moment says no to that under one. It says no to anything. It doesn't give a caveat around staying with the child until they're asleep and then removing. So leave that with us, and that's one of the ones we will be definitely clarifying and emailing out to the whole sector, not just to people attending this training. So thank you, Laura.
And then Lauren's commenting that I believe the Lullaby Trust states children 12 months and under in a cot, and DFE say 1 and under, which could be read as up to 24 years. And you're quite right, Lauren. And again, that caused a little bit of confusion this morning, didn't it, when we were talking about the different ages? So yeah, that's really useful to highlight. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Anything else, Liz?
No, I can't see anybody typing. I can't see the dots going up and down.
I think that again just shows us how remarkable this sector is, because we know that when it first dropped, there was a real kind of, oh, how are we going to deal with it? And yet already the early years sector goes, okay, this is going to be might be challenging, but we can do it. We're going to do it because it's statutory. And so somehow you find your way around it. So thank you so much. But if things do crop up that you're anxious about or you're not sure about after this session, please do email in, because we're meeting with Ofsted on the 2nd of June. And if anything else pops up, please do let us know, because it's a real opportunity for us to be gaining clarity that we can feed directly back to you. And then you've got that kind of email that we send out as another bit of clarification that can, back up your practice. Okay, over to you, Liz, for a little bit around recruitment and references. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, it's just a couple of slides. Gail's already mentioned about the EYFS reforms back in September of last year. And a new section was added on the requirements for references to support that safer recruitment, making safer recruitment more robust. And we've had a couple of questions about or comments about the standard of some of the references that providers are receiving. So we just really wanted to highlight the new section and also the DFE employer reference template, which is a very useful resource to have access to. And we'll look at that in the next couple of slides, because if you're using that DFE employer reference template, you know that you are meeting all of the requirements within the EYFS, and you're in control. If you're sending that out to for a prospective employer, you're in control of what information you're asking for, because as I'm sure you have had previous experience of, some employers, the references that they send out are very, very basic. They only confirm basic details. They've got a very standard format. So we'll have a look at the template, but just a reminder that you need to be checking that the reference has come from the person with the right level of authority in the previous place of employment. So if we just go on to the next slide, we'll just run through the template. It's very quick. It's 3 sections. The first section is around the candidate employment details, and then the section 2 is the main part of the reference. That's asking for safeguarding information, and it's just reminding the person who's completing it that the information should be around facts, not opinions, and it needs to be about substantiated safeguarding concerns that meet the harm threshold. This then goes on to ask whether if you can confirm the candidate's reason for leaving, and would you re-employ the candidate at your organisation? If no, please explain why, and if you're aware of any allegations that have been raised. And again, just a reminder that these need to be substantiated allegations. And then on the next slide, it's asking if you're aware of any safeguarding conduct or concerns that have led to referrals to the DBS, and to give details and any other further information that would be useful for you as the new employer for prospective employer for assessing that candidate's suitability to work with children. And you'll see that we've got the link there, which will take you to the actual template. And on the next slide, there's just a reference to the Safer Recruitment Consortium, which is a really useful website. You might be familiar with this website. They are the organisation that created the Safer Guidance for Working Practice, which is a really useful document if you're thinking about, for example, creating a code of conduct. If you're working in a group setting and you're thinking about a code of conduct for your staff. They've also got the Better Hiring Toolkit for education settings. So although it's aimed at school, again, it's just a really useful toolkit to be aware of. You can take bits out, you can adapt it, you can use some of the language. So just some really useful resources there when you're thinking about safer recruitment. And we'll talk about the training pathway in a little while, but one of the questions that often we get asked is, because North Somerset no longer runs any safer recruitment training, and who would we recommend? And we always signpost to the NSPCC for their safer recruitment training. It starts at around £35. You can buy in. You can pay more for some face-to-face training, but the basic training online is starts at £35. Thank you, Gail.
Thanks, Liz. Just a slide to highlight the largest area of safeguarding, certainly locally and I believe nationally, around child neglect. There is a link there to the Child Safeguarding Independent Panel, which is a really useful resource for resources, for case studies and for practical guides. So again, if you're trying to upskill your staff or yourselves and you want to have a look at that, or if you're looking at something that you want to share at staff meetings to open up safeguarding discussions, that can be a really useful source. So 60% of rapid reviews recorded neglect in the year 24 to 25, which is up from 49% the previous year. So we know for a number of reasons across society, this is growing. It's estimated that 1 in 10 children will have experienced neglect, but that's likely to be much higher. And this equates to approximately 4,600 children in North Somerset today who are experiencing or have experienced neglect. So we know you need to be alert to all forms of abuse, but this, knowing how prevalent this is, we just wanted to share this useful poster, which helps to recognise or give some pointers, some sort of, just some bullet points around recognising different types of child neglect. So there's some bullet points under physical, environmental, medical, emotional, education, supervisory, and then red flags for identifying frequently missed forms of neglect and what practitioners should do. So it's a really good aid memoir. Again, if you've got, if you have got space in your settings and staff toilets, etc., or to be using through your staff supervision, or just be using for yourself, it's just that 1-page glance which can really help just get that information really embedded. And this was the safeguarding audit that we spoke about earlier that we're going to be sending out on the 5th of June with the safeguarding questionnaire. It's a self-evaluation tool as an evidence record of what's already in place around quality, and it's to aid planning for quality improvement. The process is that you read each statement, then note down the evidence which shows how far it is true for your setting and any actions needed to improve practice or provision. It's recommended that the whole staff team, if you have one, is involved in assessing the current situation, celebrating what is going well and contributing suggestions for improvement. The audit is arranged in sections to enable it to be undertaken in manageable portions, and you can complete them in any order and at your own pace. They could perhaps be delegated out to specific staff or passed around the whole team for comment. And then share the finished audit with the team to reinforce the fact that all areas interconnect to safeguard children and promote their well-being. And there are links to further information, guidance and resources throughout the document. This is for childminders and group provision, and there's a clear symbol that's used to indicate where requirements differ for childminders. So again, stressing we're not asking you, saying you have to do this, we're offering it up as a piece of best practice around your DSL role.
Back to me. It's just a reminder about changes to North Somerset Domestic Abuse Support Services. This was in our newsletter, but just in case you haven't had a chance to look at that. So as of April the 1st of this year, Cranston became the single point of contact agency. There's a link there to our North Somerset Domestic Abuse website, and if you visit that site, you'll see there's lots of support and advice for parents, so really useful to signpost if you're concerned or you know of family parents that are experiencing domestic abuse, but there's also information for professionals, and there's details about free training that you can attend. And on the next slide, we've just got a graphic which explains the 3 different agencies and how they work together. So some of you might be familiar with Next Link. They were the single point of access previously. They're still involved. They are responsible for the safe specialist accommodation, so the refuges, crash pads, etc. But Cranston are the specialist advocacy and support service. So they're the single point of contact. This is where all the referrals are triaged, and parents can self-refer or professionals can do it on their behalf. And then you'll see there's also a box for Family Action. They're the organisation that carry out the therapeutic support. And on the bottom there are the contact details. So it's just a question of making sure that your policies, procedures, your contact details have been updated. Okay, thank you, Gail. And then just a word about, some of you will be familiar with our training pathway. It's taken quite a while to update it in light of the EYFS reforms, but this has been created by Ellen Much, the multi-agency trainer. And if we go on to the next slide, it will detail how. You okay, Gail, to just move on to the next slide?
So sorry, Liz. Yes,
that's okay, don't worry. So as I say, it's been updated in light of the EYFS reforms and the introduction of the safeguarding training Annex C pathway, those clear parameters for safeguarding training that have been outlined in Annex C. And what the pathway is detailing, it's recommending that all staff working directly with children, especially those new to safeguarding or returning after a prolonged period of absence, attend the level 1 training. That's our basic awareness training, to refresh, update knowledge and skills. And thereafter, it's about making sure that you are retaking that training every 2 years to ensure that you're fully compliant. However, if you're a childminder or you're the designated safeguarding lead, or as Gail was talking before about the deputy, you're working towards that, then you need to be looking at levels 2 and 3 of the multi-agency safeguarding training. They used to be referred to as the intermediate level and the advanced level. And then once you've attended that, making sure you're keeping up to date by attending the half-day level 3 every 2 years to remain compliant. And on the next slide, it talks about why multi-agency training. So our multi-agency training, it provides practitioners with that opportunity to engage and learn from other services within North Somerset. So those services that provide that universal intensive specialist services for children and young people. So it's an opportunity to kind of like get together, learn from others, and you know, really develop and broaden our practice and our kind of our experience. It's, as I said, it's been reviewed and updated in line with the EYFS requirements, but what we also need to be aware of, it cannot cover all of the criteria that have been set out in Annex C, and that's due to the diverse multi-agency audience. So in addition to attending level 2 and 3, you're going to have to make sure that you source some additional training. And that additional training is around managing allegations, the local, you know, our LADO role. But as Gail mentioned right at the very beginning, we have Ali Donovan. She's going to be coming to the safeguarding workshops in June. We've got the dates on a couple of slides' time. If you can't make that, if you look on our multi-agency offer, that training is run throughout the year. But of course, the advantage of coming to our workshops is that we, as well as having them in the daytime, we have them in the evening as well. But either way, you know, they're all free. All of the managing allegations training is free. What we can't offer, or we don't currently offer, as I mentioned before, is the safer recruitment training. So you need to source some safer recruitment training. And as I say, we typically signpost to the NSPCC. Thank you, Gail. As well as that pathway, Ellen has produced this very helpful guide, which training should I do? And that breaks down each of the multi-agency training offer into, you know, it details what is covered in the training and who is it for. And you can access that by going onto iLearn. The link is there, it's available. Rees also included a link to the NSSCP training catalogue, events and training, so you can have a look and see what forthcoming training dates are available. Thank you. And then there's just a slide around prevent training. We have a regional offer with dates that go right up until March 2027. All the sessions are delivered using the Home Office Prevent Training package. They are live sessions, they're online, but they are, you know, they're happening live. You book them via Eventbrite. We've got the prevent awareness, which is your core understanding of prevent. But in addition, there's a selection of further sessions that you might be interested in attending. So extremist ideology, right-wing ideology, etc., etc. They're all around about an hour and a half. So if that's something you're interested, then go on to Eventbrite and book yourself a place. Again, there's no cost associated with that. And then we've got Rees CPD update. This is not just safeguarding, it covers you know, our offer. This is produced regularly in our newsletter, so you know, keep an eye out for dates there. There's a little star against the school readiness and toilet training, which is the training that's been delivered by Eric. So I did that recently and I thoroughly recommend it. It was very accessible, really, really good quality training. Down there, we've got the child protection basic awareness and the dates for those safeguarding workshops, the managing allegations led by the LADO, which are in June. And then the final slide, there again, there's some more child protection basic awareness training there.
Super.
I think that's everything for those slides.
It is. So that's everything this evening. We know there was still a lot of information, but hopefully it wasn't too rushed, and there was something there that was useful for everybody, or at least something that was useful for everybody. Just remains for us to say, as we always do, and we unapologetically will continue to say it, thank you for all that you do. You know, our quality provision across North Somerset in early years is phenomenal. In spite of all the changes, everything that's been thrown your way for a number of years, that quality maintains because you hold children at the heart of your practice. So thank you for attending this evening. I hope giving you an extra 7 minutes means you can go and have a little bit more evening. If you have got any time, either now or at another time when you get the PowerPoint, if you can give us any feedback about these sessions, you know, again, like you, we're always about quality improvement. So anything that you feed back to us is useful.